Yeah.
Wow, so we're going to get
Not
more in
limited at
just
all.
a second. I mean, just spectacular stuff. And obviously, we saw some great moments of greatness from Giannis. We also saw some painful mistakes. One of the big plays defensively for Chicago.
Huge.
It was just
So
incredible.
earlier in the game, this is that, like, I think this is when their D-line was still struggling to score a little bit, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, in the first half, as we come back and take a look at this, and Terrence Mitchell with a great play, you know, it was a little herky-jerky for both teams. And then it felt like the offenses settled in as we got into the second half. But
Yeah,
go back to the second quarter here.
Yeah, the story of the first half was Chicago not being able to convert on their break chances, and they were able to find ways to do that early in the third. Just all of these athletes here were making plays. You can kind of point to any one moment in this game and be like, if that had gone a different way, the other team's coming out on top. Al Laviolette had some big blocks.
Big plays from both sides. And there's this falling down throw from Giannis. Not the most spectacular of his plays, but so many big shots. And
Oh, this was after Raleigh did the sideline roller and that double.
here's the turnover.
The key there was forcing out, and Raleigh was able to get some short field turnovers and just convert on them late, which was huge. Chicago looked like they had this game under control, and Barker.
This is a shame.
They got
this
pinned.
is a shame.
They got
just
pinned.
got out of jail right there. They were wrapped it like
That was the
relieve
one,
pressure.
right?
Yeah, and it's turf. It's tough.
And then tying the score, front corner of the end zone.
This tip was incredible.
Oh,
I was so
right.
upset it wasn't read better. That was a great play by Saul Yannick at the end of regulation.
So smart.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen a couple teams do that towards the end of the regular season. To do that in that moment and have that awareness is next level.
And then the wide shot to Terrence Mitchell.
Overtime started out pretty normal, both teams trading blows. And then things got pretty hairy because Raleigh receiving the start of the first overtime. They've got to win this overtime.
And how about this play from Drew Swanson? It felt like that was going to change the game.
It did, especially because they were able to put Pavel Giannis in after Drew Swanson cramped after that D. And it really looked like Chicago was set up, was poised for success.
I was shocked they didn't take a timeout, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
With 40, 45, 46 seconds, get that O-line out there, possess the disc till the end of the, get the last shot.
Elijah Long scoring after the turnover previously.
And this hammer, off the hands of Keegan North.
Wow.
That's soul crushing, right? Kurt finds a wide open person.
I mean,
right
that's a
there.
difficult catch, jumping catch, but it's a catch you got to make.
Yeah. At this level, he has that catch. He knows that.
And the Raleigh Flyers take the win in overtime. How many crazy one-point games has this team been in this season? They're used to it. They're ready for it. They know it's coming. Wow, spectacular stuff. So, thoughts on the adjustments we saw at halftime and the way this game played out? I mean, does it really feel like it hinged on basically the one mistake from Pavel Giannis all game?
I don't think so. I mean, honestly, I think you can look at a couple issues there. There were definitely adjustments defensively that I felt Chicago kept them guessing. Raleigh did not look comfortable until their D made a play. And then the O started to sort of believe, but then they almost throw it away again. So to me, honestly, I don't think so. I don't think you can pin that on Powell. I think we got to look at any number of situations, like maybe that timeout at the end in overtime. I would have called that. Milk the clock, get the last shot, go to second overtime. You're going to receive the disc with your O-line to go. I would do that.
Wow. Well, Saul Yannick is here to join us to talk. So, Saul, come on in. Can't wait to get his perspective, and we'll scoot over. You can slide in here, Saul.
We've been here before.
Congratulations, reaching championship weekend. I mean, tell us just how you're feeling right now.
I mean, to be honest, I kind of feel the way that I felt after the last month of games we've played. It's just a bit of suspension of disbelief and, a little fairy dust and consistent defensive game plan and execution. And then, the offense stops throwing into double coverage deep and we win the game.
Well, what does your defense finally figure out? It took a long time to get the break that you needed to kind of come back into the game in the second half. As you're, kind of following from the sideline, what did you see them finally figure out?
I mean, early in the game we got some turns. We had a turn that was called back for an offensive travel, right? We're getting pressure in the sets that we wanted to. And, it's a cliche, but to some extent, we just asked them to hit windows, and sometimes they hit the window. and then things get a little hairy, and they see our offense scoring uncontested, and things tighten up a little bit, and guys throw it at the ground, right? And like, again, it's a little suspension of disbelief, and so far, we are one more game suspending our disbelief until we're where we want to be.
Questions?
Yeah, so you go through that third quarter run, and Chicago looks like they're running the table, almost having like a perfect half all the way out with 2 minutes to go. How did it feel with the pressure mounting for you from the O-line? You had to score quickly. Durs hit that shot to Henry Fisher that was pretty critical to score. What was the messaging with 4 minutes to go? Were you guys thinking about scoring? Were you guys thinking about scoring quickly?
We don't do a ton of hey, we got to score fast here. It's more like find the first thing and just hit it right away. Don't overthink things. And it didn't feel like there was pressure on us. It felt like for the entire fourth quarter, we threw 0 throws that were D'able, right? As soon as we got within 30 yards of the end zone, we were going to score within the next 20 seconds. So it was just a matter of finding the open guy, taking 15-yard chunk up the gut throws, and as soon as we got to the end zone, we had tons of leverage everywhere as long as we moved the ball. And we did tightrope the left sideline here a number of times, but we're at home a little bit there. So we saw the defense creating pressure. There was just 1 or 2 outs on every single D point through the fourth quarter. And all we could do as the O-line is just be guys, just do our job. The D's going to get us there. And so far, so good, I guess.
I think I wanted to know, you just talked about this confidence in the red zone offense. That makes a lot of sense. I don't know if you were aware in the first half, you guys actually were struggling a little bit. I think you were 5 for 9 in the red zone department in the first half.
Is that the O or the D?
These are great questions.
I think it's a combination.
Sure,
so
Yeah.
sure.
So,
It could have been the D line.
It shouldn't matter with the Raleigh way, right?
Sure.
I'm wondering what you guys. Were there any adjustments?
Yeah, we
Did you
put
feel-
Elijah Long on the field, man.
Got that fourth.
Right, we've got to be a little bit true to our lines early in the game so we can execute sort of standard rotations. We can't run a whole game with sort of unconventional rotations, but we get to the third, we get to the fourth. Elijah is another weapon that we can put out there. He makes it really easy for the guys he's throwing to, and he creates a ton of leverage by running off his throws, forcing the defense to rotate around a lot. And when you have him out there with me, Matt, and Anders, I don't know, we're very much comfortable with the really big field and the 4 guys who know how to throw to each other in small spaces. So, and we saw at the end of the game, they started crashing down on everything on the goal line, and so I threw 2 blades to unguarded people.
Yep.
So, those are just the looks that we earn by refusing to give the disc to the other team.
You do have the turnover, though, late. Elijah throws the scuba, and it gets knocked away. What's going through your mind?
I don't know. Just a little. You take the good and you take the bad, right?
Sure.
DC last weekend, when Elijah threw the upfield inside-out flick to Durs, and Durs continues with an around backhand to Matt in the end zone. You can see in the slow-mo, Elijah cocks the lefty scoober. He's ready to throw it. And he pumps it and he throws the inside flick. So we're just living in this timeline where he decided to throw it, right? But then, the great thing about our O-line is if teams can't throw cutter to cutter downfield. Oh, Jay Bill. Sleep tight. Hey man, make sure you don't score efficiently or I'm coming for you tomorrow. I would just say, if they don't throw cutter to cutter, me and Matt feel very confident defending their handlers on the D-line offense. And that was an instance of us applying pressure and making a thrower uncomfortable.
We saw you in that instance matchup a couple times against Kurt.
Yeah.
And your offense got the disc back
Yes.
several times, especially in the first half. Chicago didn't get one of their break chances off the board. So how much of that is intentional, right? You said you like those matchups. Is that something, we talk about Mike, talk about all the thought that goes into the game planning. How much of the game plan was for your offense to play that strong of defense, or is that just something you practice normally?
We didn't game plan a ton for our O-line D. It was just don't let them throw away passes. Make them throw passes. Passes, make them throw it sideways. And like you saw, a lot of their cutters stand still when they're playing offense. So as long as we, I am the biggest person who doesn't guard cutters on our line. So, you're not going to put Matt on Kurt as much as, you probably want Matt guarding Tim or Joey in that situation. I don't know. It's not super intentional. It's just us being comfortable playing with each other and making the correct read in the moment. So, I mean, props to Matt for sort of neutralizing him, and big shouts to number 45 for not throwing the free dump to Pavel when I was beat at stall 5.
What was the team sentiment in the second half of the game where you didn't have a break until the tail end of the game? Like, how was everyone still in it and ready to pounce when that moment arrived very late in the game?
Sure. I don't know. There was a little bit of wavering. You know, individuals at times had moments where they were not quite, fully committed. But for the most part, you know, there was a lot of sort of looking at each other and smirking and being like, okay, here we go again, right? That's the thing that we 100% felt confident in coming into this game is we played 3 great teams over and over again in the regular season, and we were pushed to our limit, and we learned who we were when we were pushed to our limit. And I don't really feel like Chicago knew how they were going to respond as well as we did. And, you know, Frisbee's kind of a random game at the end of the day, right? Like I've lost a lot of close games that I felt like I should have won, but you know, there is a little bit of fairy dust around this team, and it's hard to explain exactly what that's about.
Well, yeah, I want to ask you about that. I mean, Raleigh has had a history of losing these kinds of games, close, late, semifinals situations, lose them, not win them. So
Sure.
What's different about this 2021 Flyers team?
I mean, this is a super different team than has been losing to Dallas, right? So there's Ring in club, and Ring historically has lost to Revolver. And then, you know, last season in 2019, we had a coin toss, like a coin flip game in semifinals again. The Flyers have lost to Dallas historically, but this team, the makeup of this team is so different from the makeup of all of those teams. So we understand the storylines around everything, but you know, this is a really good group of largely young guys, impressionable guys, and they have listened to what Noah has to say, and they have fully taken the Kool-Aid all the way down. So I don't know, man, you got to get some good results. You got to get some good results to believe that stuff. But we've made it work, and you know, besides some sketchy D-line offense decisions, you know, a lot of our young guys really showed up today in a really big way. Like Ethan Bloodworth. Oh my God, that kid's amazing. That kid is amazing.
All right, well, you're headed to the final. You're playing New York. You've seen him before. You had a crazy game during the regular season against them, probably the game of the year. What are your expectations for that game? How do you prepare for it?
Sure, I think if there's a ton of wind, that favors them. I think if it's calm, that favors us. They use their pieces well, right? Like they don't have a ton of huge names on their D. They've got huge names sort of on their O, and they've got Jeff. And I guess Marquez is the biggest name that you can have. But at least in the San Diego game that I got to watch, it looked like they were utilizing their pieces really well, right? They were sort of maximizing the guys that they could play on D, and then Jack sort of helped them out a little bit, and Jack threw some jump balls to Ben when it was super windy, but I don't know, man. I expect Mike to have a complex but not that complicated game plan. I expect us to try to get a lot of sleep, and I expect us to really try to make Jack work his ass off.
To me, I look at this next matchup, and you got your team is cohesive, smaller, possession-oriented,
Sure.
and I love the adjustment you made to bring Elijah Long on 2 weeks in a row to close out games, right? And you said that it brings you that more comfort to play more of the smaller ball, right? Then you look at New York. New York is an end-of-quarter dominant team.
Except for one game.
All right, fair enough.
Can't beat us end of quarter if you can't get the disc to the end zone.
True. I feel like the height, though. I mean,
Oh, 100%.
yeah.
100%.
Do you feel that?
I mean, yeah, first game of the season, Daryl.
I mean, I agree.
Right?
I didn't have my tallest people out
Right?
there. Yeah.
So, I mean, a big aspect is we're going to sick Henry on Jack with less than 10 seconds to go. We're going to say, Henry, go run down there and put your big arms in front of Jack. Don't let him throw any backhands. So that's a big part of the game plan.
Oscar can throw.
I mean, Ryan's great.
Chartok can throw. Weaver can throw.
Well, Elliott's banged up. Anyway, in normal flow, we are going to ask Ben to be a thrower, like everybody does, and we're going to trust that our defense will execute well enough around that we will get the turns we need, right? This time when we play New York, we're not going to throw discs at the ground when they run their no-mark zone. right? And we're going to throw the disc under when Jeff is lingering in the deep space, right? We are a very different team than we were when we went to New York a few weeks ago, right? And we had 3 chances to win that game. So I don't see the need for a ton of huge adjustments.
Well, there you have it. There's the game plan. There's Mike Denardis going to pull you in a second off his camera in a second, so you're not giving it away.
I mean, this is not rocket science.
All right, well, you got to get some sleep. Thank you so much.
man.
Congratulations again.
Got plenty of
Appreciate
time.
it. It's going to be a lot of fun. We do. We have a full day, don't we? It feels a little different to have the full 24 hours, but 7 o'clock, the final tomorrow. Saul, thank you so much. Any final thoughts on this one?
Hey, man, just excited to play one more game against Jack and Ryan before they get to catch the Frisbee for me going forward.
Well, we will wait for that to come. Saul Yannick, thank you so much.
No problem, guys.
All right. So, crazy victory, Raleigh. Always great to talk with Saul. So smart, student of the game. I mean, the tip, right?
Tip.
So
Yeah.
impressive.
So smart. We should have asked about the tip. Of course, I think about it as soon as he walks up.
His teammates let him down, man.
We got some highlights to check out from both New York and Raleigh today. So let's take a look at those. I think we're going to welcome in Evan Lepler as well if he's still around. And so, I mean, New York, a much more comfortable victory than for Raleigh. But it doesn't mean that tomorrow's going to be an easy game for New York whatsoever.
It was a team complete victory, right? Everybody doing their job early for New York and getting out to a large lead. That's exactly what they needed after Jack Williams had that incredible 39-point performance against Atlanta.
Anders Hughes showing off the wheels. That massive sky from Babbitt. Man,
So guaranteed.
that's just,
Yeah, he could talk. Saul was very confident, but those are some really big guys.
They're some big
They
guys.
finish plays. I don't know. You can play perfect defense and having that option.
There's the tip from Yannick. Just such an intelligent play.
And those blades lady was
And they-
talking about.
Exactly. I mean, hey, let's get them really compressed with all that handler motion and relieve the pressure with those big blades out. That's great.
Marquez Brownlee and the Empire heading in to the final to play this Raleigh Flyers team as we welcome in Evan Lepler. Evan, well, wow, you just called a crazy game.
Yeah.
Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, catching my breath. That was a classic. That's the second semifinal that you hope for. I mean, we've had some crazy ones through the years. We've had some crazy buzzer beaters. That Saul Yannick tip would have been an all-timer. But still, an amazing finish. It's obviously unfortunate that it kind of ends on an unforced turnover with Keegan North. It was a great throw by Kirk Gibson, I thought, going across the field, and just went right through his hands, and a smart play by a smart team. Raleigh, there was like 12 seconds on the clock. I think they have 10 seconds officially to go pick up the disc. They waited till it went under 7, pick up the disc, and then the game is over. So I'm curious to get your thoughts, Daryl, because look, Raleigh, despite all their defensive pressure, was not getting any turns until Pavel just kind of threw that open side flick that he usually seems to have one of those a game, looking for Jack Shanahan, and that opened the door, and obviously the Ross play after that. But was it death by 1,000 cuts? Did Raleigh grind their way enough to earn that turnover, or was this a Chicago choke?
I'm going to lean on the Chicago choke piece only because Raleigh has that experience of not just this season, but throughout their franchise's history of just going up against these hard opponents, coming up just short. I think we've seen that in other sports. Michael Jordan was at the precipice for many years before his team breaks through. I think Raleigh right now is showing that team. They've been tested over and over. I don't think Chicago
that's breaking
has.
through?
I think they're the team that's breaking through, yes. This is that young team that's been together for several years and is now finally starting to peak.
Yeah. There was also, I don't know, I had my headset on, obviously, and obviously there are a lot of empty seats there, but I thought there was a really incredible atmosphere for like the last 5-6 minutes of the fourth quarter and overtime. The fans that were here, the sidelines.
It was raucous.
The coaches, the assistant coaches. Eric Martin, the assistant coach for the Flyers, gave a speech heading into overtime. Like, I was ready to go out there and do a shoulder high layup block. It was unbelievable, the intensity of that game. A heartbreaker for Chicago, but hey, Chapter 3, Raleigh, New York. The last 2 times they played have both went to double overtime. Brian, you remember the first meeting fondly. You were a spectator this past August when they met again. And, I frankly think they're the 2 best teams in the league, with all due respect. And and they're going to get to play on the big stage. And I appreciate you sitting up here with us, because I imagine it's not easy to watch these two teams have these moments, but it makes you yearn for it even more. And DC Breeze 2022. I know you're working the back shadows
Absolutely.
behind the scenes right now.
You probably overheard me, didn't you?
Yeah.
There's a lot of all-stars here. That's all I'll
But
say
I
about
mean,
that.
I thought Saul put it really well, talking about they don't need to reinvent the wheel from a strategy standpoint. But I also think, look, we're going to see some wrinkles from both coaching staffs. I mean, what New York's coaching staff did today to really take the San Diego Growlers out of everything they wanted to do was staggering. And we're going to see some fascinating wrinkles tomorrow. Like, will Raleigh be able to be patient enough offensively, more patient than San Diego? I think so. But Raleigh's a very streaky team, as we see over and over and over again.
But there's familiarity. You know, they're divisional opponents. I don't think we're going to see one team pull away. I don't think New York's going to blow them out or anything like that. I think we saw tonight. You know, Chicago disrupted some of what Raleigh was trying to do in the first half, but then Raleigh's offense really settled in, and they got crucial hold after crucial hold after crucial hold, and finally they were able to take advantage of a mistake. But that mistake from Giannis doesn't matter if the Raleigh O-line gives up a couple more breaks in the second half. I mean, the game would be out of reach at that point. So I really think we're going to be in for a very close, very interesting game tomorrow. New York's game planning, they know how to play against each other. They've already done it multiple times.
Brian, what makes Raleigh a tough matchup for New York from the Empire perspective?
Well, I think when you look at the kind of like the depth of defenders that New York has, is they have excellent cutter defenders, excellent height. Jeff Babbitt, Marquez Brownlee, Ryan Drost, and Mike Drost. What they don't have is a plethora of handler defenders, really quick guys that can go out. And I think one of kind of the underrated additions this season could be Noah Chunmoy. Just getting some agility on the field could be crucial, because that handler core, like guarding Saul Yannick, guarding Matt Guccio-Hannes, guarding Elijah Long when he comes over, they don't have three top handler defenders. They're going to have to find creative ways or bring over Jack Williams. And they did it, and they won't hesitate again, but like, does Jack Williams have the fairy dust magic that, Raleigh's talking about right now? I don't know.
What a night.
Yeah.
First overtime game, the championship weekend in
hard
the
to
history
believe.
of the league, I think.
Heard you say that on the air. I was surprised.
Did you also hear a prediction of such a thing happening?
That's true. Daryl at halftime.
Yeah.
Who could have
He
seen
called
a
the
win
OT.
by one in overtime other than Daryl Stanley?
All right. No, I feel pretty good about that. That was all from the score.
But barely. You said
yeah.
23-22.
Yeah.
It was 21-20. That's really close.
Who do you think New York wanted to play?
Ooh.
Did you guys talk about that at all?
Yeah.
We did.
I feel like they probably wanted Chicago. I would think. I mean, there's the fire and ice thing that Brian was just talking about. Like, you'd rather look at a team that says, hey, I dare you to throw jump balls. I dare you to throw over the top with that junk defense. I think that New York would say, please, thank you, and we will. Can it be easier for us? Sending 3 people at Ben Yat doesn't work. I've tried it. I've sent 3 very, plus-size people at him. It doesn't matter.
Have you tried all 3 Bergerons on Ben Yat?
Not yet. I will.
One day.
We did it to Henry and it worked, but Ben's the MVP.
Yeah, he is. But, I mean, I really thought the Empire supporting cast, and I mean, you mentioned Noah Chunmoy, he scored a goal, but, I mean, Marquez Brownlee had a really good game. Who else had a hand block on the mark? Mike Drost got one. I mean, Empire was just flying around.
Angelo
against San
Olchese
Diego.
had a couple.
Angelo
He got a hand block,
Olchese.
actually.
That was phenomenal. I mean, he's a really good player, and it's cool to see him and Chunmoy and those other guys who didn't get to play a whole lot against Atlanta get the opportunity and deliver and earn that PT, and that fires up D1 in the O-line too, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, honestly, DC lived on that kind of depth,
Yeah.
and you just love it when you see your guys going out there. You've been working with them all season, grinding in practice, trying to build up that second unit, trying to build up these young guys and say, hey, this is like going to be your moment. There's going to be a moment when I'm going to ask you to go out there and go guard some of the best players in the world because you're that good. And I think those New York defenders now believe that.
So we got to help out DraftKings. What should the spread be for tomorrow's game? I got a thought in my mind, but I'm curious to throw it around and see what y'all think.
Go.
New York by 1.5.
I think it's a pick 'em.
Oh man, I really think the fact that Raleigh played a later game that went into overtime, and I thought it looked like they had to work harder in this game. So I'm going to say New York by 2.
Wow. Yeah, I'll go.
Not saying what you think is going to happen in the game. I'm saying what the spread should
Oh,
be.
2.
Okay.
Oh, I'm gonna go New York minus. Gosh, I gotta get half the bets on either side, right?
Yeah,
I think 1.5's the right number.
I thought 1.5 as well.
I feel like half would have been fair if you really helped me with that.
And here's the thing.
Because like they just
Raleigh-
played, like
Yeah.
they played hard. New
Yeah.
York didn't. Have to play
Raleigh
as hard.
hasn't lost by 2 since 2019.
It's really
It's,
impressive.
it's unbelievable
That's
to think
really
about. I mean, I just think that New York maybe should be the favorite, but I think we're going to see big money come in on whichever team is getting plus points. Because I mean, I think it feels very plausible to see a 1-point win, and we've seen the spreads get tighter and tighter. We've seen most lines opening at 1.5 the last few weeks as we've gotten into the playoffs. So I think that you could get 1.5, but I'm not betting on New York to win by 1.5. I think they'll win by 1. So.
Well, the
So that's
story's
good
already
line.
written, right? We've seen this over and over again. It's going to be Jack Williams to Benyat in the end zone by 1 in overtime, right? 21-20. That's how this goes. And so, sorry, Raleigh, the princess is another castle, but, that's how this story ends.
Well, Jeff Babbitt caught the game winner in double overtime.
Okay, well, if you want to call Jeff Babbitt, I'm not going to complain about that.
Or Yacht, or Lithio, or Osgar. Yeah, a lot of big people.
I didn't think that we'd see any kind of starstruck tentativity from Lithio, but I was kind of delighted that he looked like he's looked all year long. Like, and maybe even a notch better than all year long. Like, he came to play today, no nervous mistakes, no errors, and that's so important for a guy who's got the skill but not the experience. For him to come out on this stage and do that, and he's done it all year long.
One thing I want to point out, as good as Solomon Rushmeyer-Bailey has been, Elliot Chartock's not going to be starting on the offensive line tomorrow for New York. Raleigh has great handler defenders. We've seen it these last 2 playoff games. How is New York's offense going to look? Because they didn't have to get challenged today. Their D-line did so much work for them in the first half that it was a stress-free kind of a game.
Right.
Like, they look good for sure, but they also won 50-50 jump balls a bunch of the time, which they will do that. But I think that we could see Raleigh's pressure, the same thing we talked about before the Chicago game. Raleigh's pressure applied to that reset space, does that cause New York problems? Jack Williams was super steady today, and he probably will continue to be so, but I could expect to see a few more turns.
Can I bring it back to tonight's game, Raleigh-Chicago, for a minted? Curious to, maybe you guys have talked about this, I apologize. What do you guys think of the intensity, the physicality, the hot-headedness that we saw at times in this game? Did we go right up to the line without crossing it? Did we cross the line? What did you think about that? Because, I mean, honestly, I don't feel like we crossed a line. I thought we got pretty close to it, and it was just a great sporting event. But it was a huge factor in the game, the intensity from both sides.
Tim Schock's catch, for me, was incredible, right? We talked about him in the pregame as just one of these players, one of these secondary players for Chicago. That is incredible. And his determination just showed right there. He went and really put himself out there on the line. Okay, he ran into Durs, right? Durs isn't like the biggest guy compared to Tim Schock. But that was a heady catch. And I did like, honestly, the intensity of like people stepping up and saying, hey, no, we didn't do anything dirty right there. We're going for a disc that we had a right to go for. They both stepped up. I don't think Durs made the best bid right there, but at the same time, I really did kind of like the chippiness, if I'm going to be honest.
What about Fairfax
after.
Stepping over Gibson after making that catch over there? Or was it Gibson or Goff? Might have been
It was
Goff.
Goff.
I don't know if I like stepovers as much. I mean, I'm a Philadelphian, and I should love some stepovers.
How do you not like stepovers if you're from Philly?
That is really showy. That is a spike on a person.
I mean, it definitely is, but
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that has to be like part of your personality if you're from Philly. You're like, yeah, I'm looking for
I like watching
opportunities
that
to
guy
step
doing
over
that.
random people on the street.
I love it. How can you not
love
love
it.
it?
Yeah, I also
I mean,
love it.
I love everything about this game and just like the competitiveness, the histories between some of the players, and just, it came down to one throw. That's what it was. Like, you can look at so many decisions here. Elijah Long almost was the GOAT in the wrong way and then was able to score that goal. And then you had Kurt, which looks like a beautiful hammer, and it's just a little too high, and Keegan North can't get his hands on. It's like, it's just an incredible game where any one mistake could have made the difference.
And if Keegan makes that catch, he's got like 11, 12 seconds. He's
Enough
probably
time.
throwing the tying goal, maybe at the buzzer, maybe with 4 or 5 seconds left, and then Chicago would have received in double overtime. So, I mean, it pivoted dramatically right there.
They had the chance to break, right, with a potential to call a timeout.
45 seconds.
All they have to
Yeah.
do is not get scored on, and they receive in double OT.
So they got Pavel on the field right after the injury, so they decided not to take the timeout. Then they give it away, and then they take the timeout on the line. It's like, that feels, you're going to be thinking about that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to be thinking
very
about that
unfortunate.
one.
That to me maybe was a little bit of inexperience, not necessarily thinking of your timeouts in a semi-pro way. Like I feel like the AUDL, we're focused on that there's a lot of value in that timeout. I can sub in everyone I want.
Yeah.
As a coach, that's like your number
just
one
don't
weapon.
understand why
You
you wouldn't
don't
want
have
your
to
O-line.
score.
Well, we also talked about this at the beginning of the game, how Chicago hasn't had a ton of high pressure games where they have to utilize those
That's a great point.
timeouts in that way. And it was like, in that moment, I don't think Dave Woods saw his timeouts in the kind of way that Brian has or Daryl has, especially playing the season in the Atlantic Division. Like, it is a tool that you absolutely must use in the correct way.
Didn't see it in the second quarter. We thought it should have been called,
Yeah.
right? Especially after multiple turn points, especially after you're 0-5 for getting breaks in the first half.
We didn't even see it in the third quarter. The
didn't see the
first
third
deed
quarter.
that it was the second break chance that they got that they finally called the timeout.
I
And it
was
didn't end
thinking-
up working for them.
I was thinking the same exact thing in the booth as it happened, and I was looking around for Ben Feldman because he's the coach of the Winchell over there. He made a timeout call that I was suspicious of in the Central Final when Chicago got within one, not on the point. He calls a timeout before the point, presumably to keep the O-line fresh. I was shocked they called that timeout there. Like, there's still 2 minutes left. Your D-line has been a disaster in terms of conversions much of the night. They were better in the second half, granted, but
The strategic value of the timeout is just massively reduced by using it between points.
Yes.
I mean,
Now-
it's just that
Yes.
simple.
It's wasted.
It's wasted.
The Raleigh game
Yeah.
in Raleigh that you
Yes.
played, week 2,
Yeah.
you called a timeout
I called
in
2
between
timeouts in the third quarter.
points.
Oh,
In the first quarter,
I did
you
that
were
one
down
too.
5-2, I think.
that's right.
And you, like, is that just to kind of begrudgingly, I gotta take this here and waste it to regroup the team?
He's got you.
Literally, yes. I was like, hey, this is an early season. There's
like,
a lot of game left.
I was
we had
about to
settle
say,
down.
like, declaratively, you should never make a timeout call unless it's during a point for some strategic purpose. But
you're right. You're right. I would love not to.
But clearly, it swung the momentum of that game in Raleigh, and you guys came back to win 25-24.
I think it's a matter. It's situational, and you gotta. It's a lot of feel. Like, we can say a lot of these things now with hindsight.
Yeah.
We're not in that moment with that pressure. I mean, it's taken me a long time to think about the automatic triggers in order for me to make what looked like good timeouts or what seemed like good timeouts when they're retrospectively analyzed. I think it takes a lot of practice. I think you have to fail at it a bunch, and I feel like Raleigh has failed at it a bunch, and now knows how to use that. And I don't think that the West Coast team, San Diego, I don't think that Chicago were in those situations enough to get that experience.
Did any of y'all notice? It was literally the last shot as our broadcast went off the air, like a slow-mo of Denardis throwing his clipboard up in the air, and like the papers are flying wild, and I'm like, who's gonna get that landed on their head? And it was just like the euphoria on that sideline. I mean, you know how much this means for Raleigh,
Yeah.
and that's cool to see, and that's going to be a question that we can discuss tomorrow. Like, does this matter as much to New York? They won a couple years ago. Raleigh has been yearning for this moment forever. Like, obviously it matters to New York, but there's a different level of urgency but Raleigh's also never been here before, and New York's got that experience. So a talking point heading into tomorrow, perhaps.
Let me just give you some stats from this game real quick, because it's easy to think about the big plays, the big moments, the turnovers, but each team had 3 breaks. Each team had 17 turnovers. Their offensive holds, 18 of 31 for Raleigh, 17 of 26 for Chicago. This was just an incredibly tight margin game. I mean, it's actually incredible. Raleigh went 14 for 20 in the red zone. Chicago went 12 for 12, and Raleigh still won the game.
Right.
I mean, that's to give it up 6 times in the red zone and still
Chicago
win.
kept turfing the disc on their own goal line.
Yeah.
I wanted to make the point, though, Evan, you brought up about kind of New York's urgency, because this is a team that's technically the defending champs, but there's so many new pieces,
Yeah.
right? You got to imagine Elliot Chartok is hungry. You got to imagine John Lithia is hungry,
Oscar.
and Osgar, and adding those new pieces can be rejuvenating because it makes it feel new again. And that's what's really interesting to see New York kind of handle. Is like, of course they have high expectations, but it feels like you're chasing again. It's much easier to chase a championship than it is to defend a championship.
Brian, I'm sure you've talked about this before, but you're not going to be here tomorrow, so I got to ask you now. The game plan for the Empire tonight, and maybe you had some secret conversations about it with those guys beforehand and you knew what was coming. But what did you think? Because they played junk and zone, but the way they came out in the first half and stymied San Diego, I mean, I give Charlie Hoppus and Anthony Nunez and the entire Empire Brain Trust a ton of credit, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how they started that game from a strategic standpoint.
Yeah, strategically, I think it's great. I think you come out with that junk and you control the pace of the game, right? The offense is going to score. You're going to make it so that San Diego can't go on any runs very quickly and can't get hyped up, and they've got to work it and make a lot of decisions. And from there, I think the most important thing is they got off to a fast start. That team did not come out not hungry. And that was kind of like, we knew it immediately in the first quarter. If they were going to win this weekend, they had to have this type of victory because you just can't play Jack Williams 40 points every single game. You can try. We haven't seen it done, but eventually, usually
It might work.
It might, maybe. I mean,
Maybe
if you
tomorrow.
have
Jack
to,
Williams.
if you have to, maybe. But
They will.
I think that was the bigger thing, right? Was they got the performances they needed, not only from the defensive depth on defense to get the blocks, but putting in those breaks early. Just getting one D2 line out there to get a break. Oh, you get one of those, it's a relief and it builds confidence for everybody throughout the team.
So I know Jack Williams, when he played against Raleigh in 2019 for the first time, was nervous, and it was really strange for him going against his buddies for the first time. When he faced him a month and a half ago in New York, he said it was much more comfortable. And, I mean, you kind of saw that in the way he played. Not that he played poorly 2 years ago. And I wonder how he will handle tomorrow. I mean, it's a championship game. It's a different level of experience, but obviously he's been on that stage before. A championship game against your friends. It's different from a regular season game against your friends.
He said it after the game that he wanted Raleigh. He wanted to go up against them. He seemed genuinely
Yeah.
excited to play them.
Yeah.
I didn't notice nervousness or hesitation at all.
I'm not thinking nervous. I just think it's fascinating because, either way, Raleigh was going to get one of the top players in the history of the franchise going against him to try and deny them a championship tomorrow, whether it was San Diego winning and Nethercutt and Goose is the Robin to Nethercutt's Batman, or whether it's Jack Williams, who might just be Superman. Who knows? That catch on the first point of the game today, one of the great plays of the entire freaking season.
Yeah.
And it's just so casual with a guy like Jack.
Yep.
You come to expect it.
Wow.
All right. Well, this was great fun.
Yes, it was.
We got an exciting day tomorrow coming up, 7 o'clock, Raleigh versus New York. We'll have pregame live right here, starting at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. A few more highlights from today. Ben Yacht, he's making layout catches. Terrence Mitchell, he's going up in the air. Unbelievable stuff all around. Wow. Can't wait for tomorrow. This is going to be a blast. For Evan Lepler, Daryl Stanley, Megan Tormey, Brian Jones, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying good night from Washington, D.C., and we will see you tomorrow.